네, 글로벌 인재포럼 2023 첫째 날 현장 열기 더해주신 모든 분들 진심으로 감사드립니다. 식사 맛있게 하셨습니까? 자, 지금부터는 오전의 열기를 계속해서 이어가 보도록 하죠. 두 번째 특별대담으로 오후 순서 시작해 보겠습니다. 초거대 생성형 인공지능의 출현 등 디지털 빅뱅, 현대 사회 곳곳에 정말 다양한 영향을 미치고 있죠. 이번 특별 대담에서는 디지털 빅뱅이 어떤 변화를 불러오고 있고 또 인재 개발, 혁신에 어떤 전략이 필요한가 함께 짚어보는 시간으로 준비를 했습니다. 자, 이번 특별 대담은 플레르펠르랭 코렐리아 캐피털 대표 그리고 최수연 네이버 대표이사께서 준비해주고 계시고요. 또 디지털 빅뱅과 글로벌 리더십이라는 주제로 이야기 나눠보도록 하겠습니다. 먼저 두 분을 소개드립니다. 자, 그럼 이번 두 번째 특별 대담은 발표로 먼저 시작을 해보도록 하죠. 플레르펠르랭 코렐리아 캐피털 대표께서 발표로 먼저 문을 열어주실 텐데요. 저희는 단상으로 모시고 이야기 듣도록 하겠습니다. So now please come up to the stage. 여러분 큰 박수로 환영해 주시기
So ladies and gentlemen, I'm really delighted to be standing in front of all of you, distinguished guests today in Seoul. And I would like to once again thank the Korea Economic Daily for offering this incredible platform. Today's event offers all of us a unique opportunity to reflect together on a technology whose impact everyone agrees will be massive. I find the term Big Bang in the title of our discussion today very accurate, because the scale of disruption that Gen AI brings about is unlike most of what we have seen in the past, and I would like to personally place it at the same level as the invention of chips or of the internet. Because if chips enabled universal access to computing power, and if the internet enabled universal access to information, generative AI seems to enable something that seemed out of reach even a few years ago: universal access to human-like intelligence. So to say that the promise of generative AI is immense is stating the obvious. In fact, McKinsey assessed that it could add in value the equivalent of the 2021 GDP of my country, France, to the global economy. What's even more striking in this tremendous creation of wealth is that it will happen mostly through automating tasks that usually belong to holders of higher education degrees, bachelor's, master's, or even PhDs. Most of these talents have been working in industries such as marketing, software engineering, or R&D. Industries that we all thought for a long time were strongholds of humans' ability, based on a set of skills that are quintessential to what makes us human: our ability to create and to communicate. But as we all probably have experienced now by using the likes of ChatGPT or even better, Clover X, which I am excited about, generative AI offers to machines not only the ability to understand natural language, but also to generate creative contents. The line that separates human and machine has become more blurry, and the impact of machines in industries such as banking, high-tech, or life sciences will be immense. In consumer marketing campaigns, Gen AI excels at personalizing experiences, contents, and product recommendations. In the finance industry, it's capable of generating personalized investment advice, analyzing market data, and exploring different scenarios to suggest innovating trading strategies. Moreover, in biopharma, it plays a pivotal role in accelerating research and development by swiftly generating data on millions of candidate molecules for specific diseases, and subsequently testing their application, significantly expediting R&D cycles. So the future looks bright with Gen AI. Yet, as these enthusiastic predictions are devised, one concern is looming in a lot of people's minds. Will these tools eliminate my job? Or worse, will they become my boss? So before diving any deeper into our subject and discussing with my dear friend and CEO of Naver, Su-Yeon, on the impact of AI on our industries, I would like to take a moment to step back and reflect on a challenge which underlies the emergence of not only AI, but any technologies that are so disruptive that they can ultimately reshape our industries. Because when we face such disruptive technologies and the waves of changes they bring about in our lives, it has always been fairly easy to anticipate what we risk of losing, while it has always been more difficult to understand in what form and way the creation of value that this new technology promises will materialize. This is also the case for Gen AI. As we all read about this technology and begin to have our own experience as users of these tools, we all start to form our own opinion on who might be on the losing side of this revolution. What jobs are at risk of obsolescence? What industries are faced with decline? We also have a certain level of understanding of the flaws and abuses, or even crimes, we should anticipate as Gen AI gets massively adopted. On these issues, I am convinced that Europe and Korea share a lot of the same concerns related to AI. Privacy is one of them, of course. As large language models could become a major target for hackers, we need to think of what safeguards to implement, as machines will increasingly take over the handling of information as sensitive as employees' data or medical records. Making sure that the control of these powerful tools is not concentrated in the hands of a few is also a critical challenge both Europe and Korea should embrace. The company I created, Corelia Capital, finds its genesis in a vision around the importance of digital sovereignty shared with Naver and its founder, Hae-Jin Lee. This fight is even more crucial with the advent of Gen AI. And key players in Europe and Korea should increase strategic alliances so that talents and capital is not channeled into a few players concentrated in a few countries. There are many more risks that we will need to navigate, such as the impact of AI-generated content on reliability of information. And our ability to address them collectively will be key for building trust around this transformative technology, and ultimately for Gen AI to become a tool for positive change. With the EU AI Act, Europe is at the forefront of crafting comprehensive policies and regulations surrounding AI, focusing on ethical AI development, data privacy, and transparency. The objective of these regulations is for AI technologies to develop and deploy with a strong emphasis on accountability, fairness, and safety. Korea shares much of the same concerns. And looking, for example, at the Korean legal framework for protecting personal data and its similarities with Europe's GDPR, I am confident that both will become close partners, sharing best practices and advocating together for a legal framework for an ethical development of AI. But getting back to my previous point, anticipating threats and limiting risks linked to AI is only one side of the challenge we need to address to harness all the promises of this revolutionary technology. An even greater challenge is guiding people through this transformative period where threats seem all too tangible, while opportunities seem as disconnected to one's life as some growth rate figure mentioned on some experts' reports. After all, wasn't this gap between materiality of threats and intangibility of opportunities the cause of the resistance to many innovations? Let's remember not so long ago all the heated debates that surrounded the digitization of music. MP3 will kill the music industry, some pundits say. Yet, had these pundits traveled in time to see the emergence of streaming services, pioneered by Melon in Korea or Spotify in Europe, had these pundits experienced the emergence of a new generation of artists, a lot of whom from Korea, leveraging the power of social media, maybe they would have been more cautious in their doom-like predictions. In 2022, the global music industry recorded $26.2 billion revenue, up 9% from the previous year, and marking the 8th consecutive year of growth for the industry. History is full of similar examples of innovation provoking apocalyptic predictions at time of emergence, yet resulting in tremendous value creation for the economy and ultimately progress for humanity. This is why today's topic is crucially important. Because whenever the outcome of Gen AI is positive or negative, greatly depends on people's willingness to embrace this new technology. In other words, it depends on people's ability to perceive Gen AI as an opportunity, while of course still remaining lucid on its potential dangers. And I am convinced that to achieve this objective, the role of the HR community will be instrumental. Because overcoming people's resistance is first about overcoming their resistance in the workplace. Resistance fueled by the concern about job security. The HR community has the power to address these concerns through education and training, emphasizing the importance of developing soft skills that AI cannot replicate. More broadly, emphasizing on the great potential of collaboration between humans and AI, rather than remaining obsessed by the threat of the machine replacing the human. In the end, Gen AI is a tremendous opportunity for the HR industry as well. It enables not only significant productivity gain through better data insights and automation of tasks in the recruiting process. It also makes it possible to offer ever more personalized engagement with employees, ensuring they remain valuable contributors leveraging the power of AI rather than being replaced by it. But here again, let's not be too naive about the impact of AI on HR and make sure to mitigate potential risk. While leveraging the potential benefits of Gen AI, it is important to establish an ethical framework to ensure data privacy and safeguard against bias. As companies start to adopt AI in HR, it is crucial to consider the ethical implications of this technology. We must ensure that AI is used to enhance, not replace, human judgment and empathy. The potential of Gen AI in the realm of human resources management is nothing short of transformative. When harnessed ethically and responsibly, this remarkable technology becomes a powerful tool for enhancing productivity and efficiency. By intelligently augmenting human capabilities, it can streamline processes, reduce biases, and unlock new frontiers in talent management. As we find ourselves on the verge of this AI-driven future, it is imperative that we embrace the advantages it offers while staying committed to ethical principles and responsible use. With careful guidance, Gen AI can usher in an era of unprecedented opportunities where humans are poised to thrive and prosper as never before. So together, let us seize this incredible potential to shape a brighter, more productive, and inclusive future for all. Thank you.
자, 이제 두 분을 모시고 저희는 대담을 시작하겠습니다. 부탁드립니다.
네, 안녕하세요. 네이버 대표이사 최수연입니다. 그리고 펠리링님 정말 인상 깊은 연설 잘 들었습니다. 오늘 우선 올해 한국경제 글로벌인재포럼에 이렇게 초대해 주셔서 영광으로 생각하고 있습니다. 그리고 이제 펠리링 대표님과 디지털 빅뱅과 글로벌 리더십을 주제로 대담을 나누게 되어서 개인적으로도 큰 영광이라고 생각하고 있습니다. 오늘 AI 기술이 이제 기업의 HR에 미칠 수 있는 영향에 대해서 그 스피치 그 후반부에 전반적으로 말씀을 해주셨는데요. 이에 대한 질문으로 오늘 대담을 좀 시작을 해볼까 합니다. 제가 오늘 이 장소에 오는 길에 몇 가지 좀 기사를 보았는데 현재 HR에 기업이 사용하는 그런 가치 사슬에서 AI가 가장 많이 도입된 곳이 바로 채용 분야라고 합니다. 제가 어느 한 기사에서는 약 글로벌 기업의 한 45% 정도가 채용의 전반적인 프로세스에서 AI 기술을 사용하고 있다고 보았는데요. 오늘 플레르님께서도 좀 더 나은 데이터 인사이트와 채용 프로세스의 업무 자동화를 통해서 기업의 생산성을 크게 향상시킬 수 있다고도 언급해 주셨습니다. 저 같은 경우에는 굉장히 채용을 중요하게 생각하고 있고 기업의 입장에서도 가장 중요한 건 결국에는 일 잘하는 인재, 그것에 더 나아가서 저희 기업의 조직 문화나 방향성과 일치하는 인재, 그리고 다음에 저와 같은 CEO라든지 이런 핵심 인재가 될 수 있는 그런 인재를 찾는 것인데, 이런 부분에서도 이런 생성형 AI가 도움이 될 수 있다고 생각하시는지, 그리고 생성형 AI를 채용 분야에 좀 맞춤형으로 활용한다면 어떤 식으로 활용할 수 있을 것인지, 그것에 대해서 의견을 먼저 여쭈어보고자 합니다.
Yeah, I think AI, not only generative AI, actually can be very useful for HR processes, recruitment being one of them, but maybe not only. I know some companies who started using AI a long time ago, actually, in their recruitment process to find the better profiles. So identifying by crunching some data, identifying the better profile for a certain sector of the economy and for a certain job position. And because they had a lot of past data, where they saw that the most adapted profile was maybe somebody with this academic background and this kind of experience, they can help the recruiters identify, narrow down when they recruit somebody on the profile that have the most chances of success in the job position. So this is an example of, I think, the way AI can be used. Generative AI will probably reinforce this, this accuracy and maybe maximizing the chances of success in the recruitment process. I think there's probably also some opportunity in reducing the bias. There's a lot of discussions in France. I'm not sure if it's the case here in Korea, but in France we have a lot of questions about inequalities, unfairness, in the access to job positions. The diversity in ethnical or sociological backgrounds, or the gender equality. So some people say that the recruitment processes are sometimes biased by the HR managers, and probably using more AI can, if the models of AI are trained in a way that deprives them of bias, is maybe a way to increase diversity and increase also gender equality in the recruitment process. So I think if they are used in this way, it can be full of opportunities for HR managers.
윤리적으로도 적합한 그런 채용이 가능하도록 도와주는 큰 도구가 될 수 있다고 생각이 드네요. 한국의 경우에는 아무래도 아직은 그런 남녀 차별의 문제는 여전히 존재할 수도 있다고는 생각합니다만, 많은 기업에서 이런 문제들을 사실은 없애기 위해서 노력을 하고 있고, 오히려 다른 이슈들이 좀 많은 것 같습니다. 저도 링크드인 같은 서비스의 경우에는 정말 그 예를 들어주신 대로 정말 기업의 채용 부서가 원하는 인재들을 이렇게 데이터 분석을 통해서 추천을 해준다고 알고 있는데요. 아무래도 이런 데이터를 기반한 분석이 좀 전반적으로 퍼진다고 하면은 좀 지나치게 좀 정량적인 요소들이 비중이 높아지지 않을까, 그런 우려도 드는 것 같습니다. 특히 여기 계신 분들은 잘 알겠지만 한국의 경우에는 많은 대학생들, 심지어는 지금 이제 고등학생부터 소위 이제 스펙을 쌓기 위해서 굉장히 고생을 많이 하는데요. 좋은 학교를 가는 것뿐만 아니라 좋은 그 인턴십이라든지 대외 수상이라든지 자격증이라든지 이런 좀 데이터로 표현될 수 있는 것들을 지금도 굉장히 많이 하고 있는데, AI가 이런 식으로 활용이 되면 좀 그런 것들에 대한 좀 경쟁이 치열해지지 않나, 이런 우려가 좀 개인적으로 있는데 어떻게 생각하시나요?
Yeah, I think that's a risk because maybe at some point AI will be a sort of support or will help HR manager assess soft skills, which are very important, I think, but maybe not, because we can imagine how AI can be a support to assess quantitative, the skill that you were mentioning, diplomas, experience, etc. But the soft skill, the social interface, the ability to have empathy, I think these are qualities that are very important in some jobs. In most of the jobs, actually, being able to interact with your colleagues, etc., is something that is not easy to assess, except when you have a discussion with someone and you can really, have a feeling of how it is to interact with that person. And I'm not sure that the machine or an algorithm would be able to do that anytime soon. So I think, it is certain that AI or Gen AI will be one of the tools that HR managers can use, but probably it will never replace, the face-to-face interview where a human being assesses another human being. So fortunately, there's still room for judgment, appreciation, empathy, and collaboration. So really human-to-human collaboration.
저도 이제 바깥에서 대학생들이나 저희 취업을 준비하시는 분들 만나다 보면은 네이버의 채용 프로세스가 너무 길다고 불평을 하시는 경우가 있는데요. 아무래도 저희 HR 담당자들이 서류나 이런 것들 기본적인 작업들을 하는데 굉장히 많은 시간을 투여하고 있기 때문인 것 같고, 또 말씀 주신 대로 자질이라든지 인성이라든지 이런 것들을 평가할 수 있는 그런 부분은 사실 사람들이 또 평가를 해야 되기 때문에 그 부분에 좀 더 집중한다면 저희가 찾고자 하는 좋은 인재를 찾을 수 있지 않을까, 그런 생각도 드는 것 같습니다. 방금도 그렇고 스피치에서도 그렇고 사실은 인간을 AI가 대체하지는 않을 것이다, 못할 것이라고 말씀을 하시고는 있는데, 그럼에도 불구하고 좀 기업의 많은 생산 환경에서는 좀 이러한 공포가 자리 잡고 있는 것 같아요. 사실 저부터도 생성형 AI 시대는 결국에는 CEO 같은 사람들을 대체할 수 있지 않을까? 이런 생각도 사실 해봤는데요. 말씀 주신 대로 뮤직에 관한 인터넷 기술이 생겨나면서 오히려 그 산업이 커졌던 사례처럼 새로운 직업이 생겨나기도 하고, 또 생산성이 높아짐으로써 좀 더 사람들은 창의적이고 어려운 업무에 종사하게 될 것이다. 그래서 오히려 겁낼 필요 없다라는 전망도 있는 것 같습니다. 앞으로 AI가 전반적인 직업의 생태계에 어떤 영향을 주실 것으로 예상하는지, 혹은 생성형 AI 시대는 어떤 인재들을 더 요구할 것이라고 생각하시는지 궁금합니다.
So I think this is really a very interesting question, because a few years ago we didn't imagine that first generations of AI or automatization, or digital transformation in general, we thought that they would really affect low qualified jobs. But this really started to change when we started to see that AI could really support, for example, doctors in their prescriptions, and sometimes could be better than them in diagnosing the state of the condition of a patient, and then recommending the right drugs or medicine. Also lawyers, for example, because it's very easy for a machine to have a vision of the whole case law, for decades and decades. So there are some quite high value added tasks that we did not imagine were, could be automatized, that started to be automatized. And, cardiologists or radiologists, they saw that, artificial intelligence could really almost replace them. Even though, what we were saying before, the human judgment remains very valuable at the end, but still, if you need to interpret a series of data or images, for example, but the computer can really be the human judgment. So I think this is really the new thing that is complicated, because now, okay, we can say the future of humanity is have more leisure, and actually I sort of like this idea that, even highly qualified jobs or highly qualified tasks can be performed by machines, and then the human is the sort of, can check at the end if the choices proposed by the machine are the right, and then make a final choice. So probably it will be also something that will liberate some time for people. But I think there's no real job that will be that will not have any influence of any kind of artificial intelligence in the years to come. Even in finance or in the strategic decision made in a company like Naver. I recently met with a very interesting startup in France that creates with algorithms and Gen AI digital twins of a situation. Like, for example, they worked with McDonald's, and so they are able to create a digital twin of the environment in which McDonald's is operating, meaning the macroeconomic environment, the trends, in terms of food and beverage, the attitude of consumers, the behavior of consumers in a specific region, etc. And so they can integrate a lot of factors, but thousands of different, KPIs or factors in sort of a big equation that is the environment of McDonald's. And then they can, make decisions or suggest decisions with this algorithm as to whether McDonald's should open more shops or reduce the number of shops, in which cities or in which areas he should open these shops, what kind of menu he should and pricing he should suggest. So it's really very interesting to see that, by factoring in a lot of data, probably more than a human brain could factor in, then the machine can also help companies or CEOs in their decision-making process. In the finance, it's the same. I mean, I was mentioning the idea that algorithms can give good, good advice in terms of investment strategy. So the likes of us, so investment funds, maybe we will put all the data in a machine, and then they will tell us you should invest in this company rather than this company, and then our value added will be limited. So I think basically most of the jobs are not threatened, but at least will probably see their shape or their framework evolve in the years to come because of AI. The only really difficult thing is, I think, in the creative area where we think, no, artists cannot be replaced because artists, they have this creative edge, so their creativity is not based on the data from the past. Of course, they are influenced by the past and the heritage and everything, but they still, have this genius something, an inspiration that is, out of the world and that help them, create something radically new. So we think that this one could probably not be replaced, but still you can see that, when you look at what Midjourney is able to create in terms of images, painting, even music now, multi-instrumental music in the, in the style of Bach or Beethoven can be created by machines, and it's quite striking. So I think that's really the frontier where I'm still, at a loss to predict what's going to happen. I think artists are a bit scared about that, but probably, the human genius in creation, I think will still remain something mysterious and not really replaceable by AI. I hope so, at least.
말씀 주신 대로 이제 그 8월 말 정도에 지금 저희 이제 커넥트 X라는 이제 생성형 AI라는 그 채팅형 툴을 공개를 한 적이 있었고, 챗 GPT가 나왔을 때도 많은 분들이 그 AI가 그 생산해내는 그런 창의력과 비슷한 뭐 동시를 만들어낸다거나 가사를 써준다거나 이런 부분에 놀라면서도 조금 안심했던 거는 그래도 여전히 인간의 창의력에는 도달하지 못할 수도 있을 것 같다라는 좀 그런 기분을 줬었던 것 같은데요. 동시에 저같이 창의력이 좀 부족한 그런 사람들은 정말 이제 그 어떠한 뭐 세상을 살아야 되는 건지 조금 일찍 태어나서 다행이다 이렇게 또 생각하시는 분들도 많은 것 같아요. 그래서 오늘 세션 주제가 그 디지털 빅뱅과 글로벌 리더십인데요. 생성형 AI 기술 변화로 인해서 뭐 기업의 인재상이라든지 뭐 리더십의 개념이 좀 어떻게 변화하고 있는지, 특히 저희와 같은 기업은 이제부터는 어떠한 인재를 확보하고 또 유지를 해야 되는 것인지 이런 고민들이 있어서 이 부분으로 좀 논의를 옮겨보고자 합니다. 잠시 언급하신 부분도 있는데요. 뭐 기술 변화로 인해서 먼저 기업이 좀 필요로 하는 인재들은 좀 어떻게 변화할지도 좀 궁금한 부분인 것 같습니다. 흔히들 말씀하시는 AI를 좀 잘 활용하는 능력, 특히 프롬프트 엔지니어링이라고 부르는 AI를 이제 생성형 AI를 어떻게 활용하는지를 정말 잘 아는 사람들이 필요로 하게 되는 것인지, 아니면 언급하셨듯이 AI가 정말 갖출 수 없는 공감 능력이라든지 팀워크와 같은 소프트 스킬, 그리고 창의력 이런 것들을 갖춘 인재가 각광받을 수도 있다는 생각도 드는데요. 기업마다는 다르겠지만 전반적으로 기업 내부적으로는 앞으로 우리는 어떤 인재를 채용하고 어떻게 평가해야겠다 이런 기준을 좀 어떻게 재정립하면 좋다고 생각하시는지 의견을 듣고 싶습니다.
So again, I think it's a bit difficult to anticipate, but I think there's one area where we will need, we still need a lot of talent, and this I think cannot really be replaced by the machine. It's everything that has to do with the care, what I would call the care. So it's really, we've seen since the COVID period that there was a lot of issues related to mental health, well-being of people. We are, in countries where there's a demographic issue because the population is aging, so we need to take care of the elderly people. So all these, jobs where I think the human interaction is very important because you need to care about people and for them to understand that someone and not a robot cares about them and about their issues and want to help them solve their problems, whether that be in the inside a corporate, inside a company, or in a hospital or in a facility for elderly people. I think this kind of jobs, which require a lot of soft skills, social skills, empathy, is something that we will be increasingly needed because because of AI, probably our interactions will become more and more intermediated by automated stuff, and it will be a bit lonely and maybe feel not so nice because we are social animals, right? So probably in this area of care, social support, these kind of things, I think will need a lot of people. So I think this is an area where training is also very important, because probably our societies right now have not taken this problematic or this topic enough into account, and probably these jobs are not well considered. Like, I don't know many young generation people who want to be trained as people who will help the elderly people, take care of elderly people, for example. So I think this is something we need to really focus on, because it will be needed in any way. So that's for one. And then in the corporate world, I think the supervision of these AI tools will become very important. So it's true that we need to develop these skills that will make people able to rightly supervise the functioning of AI, make sure that they can identify whenever there's a risk of bias, for example, or unethical functioning of the AI tools. And for that, being able to write the right prompts when you use a Gen AI tool, being able to evaluate and assess the tools. These are skills that we don't have right now, and that we will need to train people to master.
사실 뭐 AI뿐만 아니라 코비드라는 기간 동안 이제 기업의 문화에 좀 가장 많이 영향을 미쳤던 게 좀 일하는 방식인데요. 사실 네이버에서도 그렇고 여전히 많은 기업들이 이제 재택이라는 문화를 많이 도입을 하고 있고, 그렇기 때문에 AI가 도입되고 재택이 유지된다고 하면은 정말 일하는 환경이 외로워지고, 어떻게 보면은 이게 같이 일한다는 것에 대한 것을 잘 체감하지 못할 때가 많을 것 같아서, 말씀 주셨던 공감 능력이라든지 함께 같이 일하는 것을 느낄 수 있게 하는 능력이 굉장히 요구될 것 같고, 특히 리더들한테도 필요한 덕목이 될 것 같습니다. 그리고 두 번째로 말씀해 주셨던 그런 관리 감독 능력도, 생성형 AI는 아무래도 할루시네이션이 가장 크게 지적을 받고 있고, 저도 네이버에서 CEO를 하기 전에 이제 변호사 일을 한 적이 있는데, 이게 AI가 만들어낸 이제 감쪽 같은 판례들의 가짜 판례들이 섞여 있을 수도 있고, 이렇기 때문에 이런 것들을 잘 골라내고 판단할 수 있는 능력들이 많이 필요할 것 같다라는 생각이 들었습니다. 펠레랭님은 사실은 장관 일을 하셔서 정책에도 굉장히 많은 관심을 가지고 계시다고 알고 있어요. 그래서 프랑스와 마찬가지로 한국 역시 특히 네이버의 경우에는 인재를 지키는 것도 굉장히 중요한 일이고, 현재와 같이 AI가 더욱더 각광을 받게 되면서 한국에 있는 우수한 AI 인재들을 어떻게 지켜내지라는 걱정들을 좀 많이 하고 있는 상황입니다. 기업 입장에서는 이 인재들을 어떻게 리텐션 하는지도 중요하지만, 특히 국가 차원에서는 이게 AI라는 게 기술의 경쟁력이자 앞으로 기술 기반에, 기술 산업 기반에 다 미치는 힘이 될 것이기 때문에 이러한 인재들을 어떻게 지키는지도 중요한 고민거리라고 생각을 하는데요. 정부의 입장에서는 국가 내에 있는 이런 인재들을 지켜내기 위해서는 어떠한 지원이 필요할지 생각을 해보신 적이 있으실까요?
Well, that's very complicated because there are no borders any longer. So, someone very talented here in Korea can decide to go and work in the Silicon Valley or in Europe. And so people travel, people change environments. And so there's a global competition for talent. And we've witnessed, I think in Korea you have the same issue. In France, we saw a lot of very talented people going to the Valley. Some come back actually at some point, but some stay. So we need to have a sort of level playing field, but it is very complicated because you are in competition against some companies, some American big techs that have a lot of money and then can try to attract the best talents because they have more money. And you cannot have a sort of escalation because sometimes, a French startup cannot compete with Google or Facebook in terms of compensation. So that will be a real issue, and that's why I think training is so important. So making sure that the education systems have the right training programs that are really consistent with the needs of tomorrow. So really starting now to train a lot of people who will be in the Gen AI, but also maybe Web3 was very fashionable during COVID is a bit less so nowadays, but I think, blockchain, this is a technology that has a future. So I think, making sure that the technology that will be not commoditized, but that will be really gatekeepers and very important to master in the coming years. The governments should really make sure that the university system or that the education system can train enough talented people to accommodate for the needs of the industry. So I think this is really a responsibility, and it's not really easy because sometimes the training system or the education system is a bit lagging behind the needs of the economy. So I think where the governments could have an important role is to really make sure that the education system trains enough people for the needs of the industries. Then on the compensation or the competition or the brain drain risk, there's not much we can do except making sure that we foster innovation systems in our countries so that talented people feel like they have something to do in our countries. And I think, I just recently had a discussion with some very talented founders of a Korean startup in this environment of AI. And actually, they were in the Silicon Valley, and they came back because they want to create something here in Korea. And I think that's great. And if we can, through, for example, my company, create alliances between Korean and French ecosystem, so that we create players that can compete with the American giants, I think that would be a great achievement. So in that case, having governments that really support this kind of initiatives, I think that would be very powerful. And I hope we can support and really grow our ecosystems by doing so.
저희가 인터넷과 또 모바일 시대를 거쳐오면서 정말 이제 기술이 주도하는 산업의 시대를 거치고 있고, 인터넷과 이런 기술에는 국경이 사실은 없기 때문에 국가들의 고민도 크지만 이제 저희와 같은 기술 기업의 고민도 굉장히 커져가고 있습니다. 특히 이제 생성형 AI 경우에는 다 잘 아시겠듯이 인재뿐만 아니라 인프라라든지 데이터라든지 모두 결국에는 약간의 자본력의 경쟁이 돼가고 있는 것 같습니다. 아무래도 이제 막강한 자본력을 갖춘 이제 빅테크라고 불리는 소위 전 세계에서 몇 개 안 되는 그런 기업들이 좀 유리할 수밖에 없는 구조라고 생각이 들고, 네이버의 경우에서도 한국에서는 큰 기업이고 인재들을 보유하고 있지만 앞으로 이런 경쟁의 시대를 어떻게 헤쳐나가야 될지 정말 치열하게 고민을 좀 하고 있는데요. 실제 이제 코렐리아 캐피탈에서 만나고 계시는 여러 전 세계의 AI 스타트업들도 비슷한 고민들이 있을 것 같습니다. 아무래도 지금의 현재 AI는 뛰어난 성능을 보이고는 있지만 굉장히 비싼 기술이기 때문인데요. 스타트업들을 만나셔서 여러 조언들을 하실 것 같은데, 주로 좀 이런 생성형 AI를 다루고 싶은 스타트업들은 좀 어떤 전략적인 고민이 필요하다고 보시는지 궁금합니다.
You mean the AI startups or startups in general?
Startup general.
So right now is a complicated moment, I think, for startups, except maybe in the Gen AI sector, which is still very hype, very, a lot of investors are very interested by this sector. So what we witness in Europe, probably also in Korea, but also in the US, is overall in the tech sector, now is a time where crazy valuations is over. During COVID, there were a lot of investors with very deep pockets who were investing and pouring money in the ecosystem at crazy multiples or crazy valuations with very limited due diligence. So it created a sort of bubble. And this is really a moment where now we are phasing out of this period where I think founders thought that they could spend unlimited money and burn a lot of cash without really caring about the growth or the profitability of their company. So right now, what we're witnessing in tech is valuations are becoming more reasonable, more in line with the fundamentals of the companies, and founders or CEOs are much more focused on the cash burn, but also on the the path to profitability. So I think that's quite healthy. So that's I would not have to give any advice because I think the founders have already understood which is the new normal. So they're adjusting to that. In AI, it's a different story because we've witnessed recently, in France, for example, there was this company founded by very, very talented people who came from Meta, from Google, so very, very strong academic background and very strong track record in terms of experience. And before the company was even registered, they raised a seed round of like 110 million euros. So the company was not even registered, so only on their names and their project, but it was a project on paper. They raised 115 million, and the company was not even created, so no revenue, no business, probably a business plan, but it's totally crazy. So it's something you would never have seen in another sector than Gen AI. So right now, I think there's an interesting moment because everybody's focusing on this technology, but things need to remain a bit reasonable. And for investors, it's a big risk-taking because there will be winners in this ecosystem, but there will also be probably lost bets. I think in Korea, what is really interesting is that because for AI, the hardware, we only think about the algorithm, the LLMs, etc. But I think one fundamental thing is the hardware part of this, so the chips. And you have a unique position because you have a very strong global player, foundry, people who design and manufacture chips. So I think this gives Korea a huge advantage, a huge competitive edge when it comes to AI, because in the value chain, you have a big part of the, of the value chain. So that's, I think, something that definitely the government should support, as it does. I think it's a very, strong support, governmental support for AI. But I think it's a massive advantage for the country, at least to create a full ecosystem. I mean, Naver is obviously a part of this ecosystem, but all the, people working on applications, inference models for the AI, I think it's a great advantage for the country.
정말 지적하신 대로 그 AI라는 것도 지금 거대한 흐름이고 굉장히 지금 많은 빅뱅이라고 부를 정도로 큰 이제 흐름을 타고 있는데요. 또 돌이켜서 보면은 웹3라든지 메타버스라든지 블록체인이라든지 이런 많은 기술들도 각광을 받았지만 적합한 비즈니스 모델이라든지 정말 그 제대로 생태계에 가치를 주지 못하면 또 꺼지는 소위 말하는 그 버블이 꺼지는 그런 것들도 저희가 목도했기 때문에 또 기업의 입장으로서는 어떠한 비즈니스 모델을 만들어내고 그리고 그것들이 정말 실질적인 가치를 이용자들한테 줄 수 있을지 고민을 해봐야겠다는 생각이 들었고요. 또 정말 적절히 지적해 주신 대로 인터넷 기업의 경우에는 특히 이런 생성형 AI를 이용해서 사업을 하고자 하는 그 기업의 경우에는 이런 정말 이 데이터 처리를 해야 되는 데이터의 양이 굉장히 많고 이것들을 처리하기 위한 GPU의 그 가격이 정말 높기 때문에 저희도 현재 한국의 기업으로서 정말 다행히 저희가 반도체에 대한 경쟁력을 가지고 있어서 AI 칩스를 어떻게 개발할 것인지에 심도 깊은 논의를 하고 있고 결국에 이러한 논의와 R&D가 전반적인 그 비용의 절감으로 이어질 수 있으면 더 큰 경쟁력을 발휘할 수 있을 것 같습니다. 다음 질문은 그 아까 스피치 전반에 이제 저희가 네이버와 그 플레리님이 처음 인연을 맺은 게 사실은 한국과 프랑스가 인터넷에서 좀 주권을 가져보자. 빅테크가 점령하는 세계에서 우리가 우리의 문화와 우리의 인재의 영향에 가장 크게 미치는 이 산업에 있어서 좀 주권을 가져보자라는 의미로 좀 협력을 시작했었다는 것을 말씀 주셨는데요. 그 디지털 주권과 좀 굉장히 유사한 맥락에서 AI 주권이라는 개념도 이제 주목을 받고 있는 것 같습니다. 그래서 지금 세계적으로 생성형 LLM에 있어서 가장 주도하는 것이 미국의 MS와 구글이고 그리고 메타 그리고 얼마 전에 이제 중국에서도 이러한 것들을 발표를 하고 있는데요. 그 AI 주권을 이제 어떻게 확보해 나갈 수 있을 것인지도 각 정부들의 고민인 부분입니다. 그래서 정부 주도로 프랑스의 스타트업을 육성을 하고 기술 생태계를 부흥시키는 라 프렌치 테크를 이끈 장본인으로서 유럽에 있어서의 생성형 AI 거버넌스는 어떻게 해야 되는 것인지 오히려 그럼 그 전제로 AI 주권이라는 것도 정말 중요하다고 보시는 것인지 궁금합니다.
Yes, I think it's very important because every revolution gives rise to new champions. And so I think in Europe, we've missed the second revolution of the internet with the social network. I mean, we've discussed that before, but I was jealous as a minister in France of digital that Korea was able to have a company like Naver because, we were always complaining in France, not only in France, in Europe, that we're so dependent upon a big American big tech. So, There used to be some other search engines. For example, I remember when I started using the internet, I was using Alta Vista, Netscape. All these actors, they've totally disappeared. And now Google is so super dominant that we don't have a choice. We have to use it. You know, there have been some attempts to develop some local solutions, but they are not relevant because there's not enough. It's a network effect. There's not enough people using them. So I think, you know, on this we've really missed you know, this revolution and the ability to create a sort of European neighbor or a European champion. Gen AI, there's no champion for the moment, but when you see the money that Google is investing, for example, or Facebook or Amazon or Meta or Amazon, recently read that Facebook is injecting like $2 billion, you know, for the LLM to make Bard more accurate, etc. So this is, you know, an amount of money that no private company can put in France. And so my fear is that, you know, if we don't create alliances, then it will be the same thing all over again, where the winners are those who are so strong and who are in advance so that they can fix the standard. And once the standard is fixed, then it's very difficult for other countries or other players, you know, to become a competitor or to threaten the dominant position of those who have been you know, the first winners. So I think, you know, in this period, which is really critical, if both we can, you know, stay at the forefront of innovation, but also create alliances, because honestly, you know, in France we don't have chips. I mean, we have some companies that are active in some parts of the value chain in the chips industry, but we don't have foundries, we don't have this kind of thing. So I definitely think we should pick those with whom we want to partner and create strategic alliances and decide that it's maybe better to be partner with a country where we share the same principles in terms of transparency, in terms of ethics, in terms of you know, privacy, and decide that, you know, we'd better partner with this kind of country or of economic players and create very strong and synergetic alliances. So I think sovereignty for AI will be super important. Creating the right alliances will be super critical. And in terms of regulation, you know, in Europe, we're very strong at regulation. This is, I think, worrying a lot of companies right now in Europe that the EU Commission is preparing some regulations concerning AI. And this regulation can really be critical in creating either a huge opportunity for European actors or, on the contrary, creating a huge hurdle for them to be able to compete with the Americans, for example. So I think the decision that will be made in the years to come or in the months to come by the Commission, EU Commission, in terms of giving opportunity or, on the contrary, creating hurdles for the startups, this is going to be very important. So I hope they will make the right choices and that they will create an environment that is a good balance between protecting the users but also protecting innovation and giving opportunities to our startups.
감사드립니다. 미국과 중국을 제외하고 사실 전 세계에서 이렇게 자체 생성형 LLM 기술에 대해서 관심을 가지고 있고, 사실 저희뿐만 아니라 정말 많은 기업들이 지금 생성형 LLM을 만들기 위해서 이제 도전을 하고 발표를 하고 있는데요. 아마 그런 국가는 한국이 지금으로선 좀 유일하지 않을까 생각이 듭니다. 네이버의 경우에는 이제 2021년에 저희가 이제 최초로 한국어 초대규모 AI를 발표한 이후에 지금 올해 그 하이퍼클로버 X라는 그것을 뛰어넘는 생성형 LLM 모델을 발표를 했는데요. 아무래도 저희의 가장 큰 고민은 한국 시장에서 저희가 잘 지켜내고 한국 시장을 정말 잘하는 것도 중요하지만 결국에는 글로벌 시장에서 어떻게 경쟁을 하고 글로벌 시장에서 펼쳐나갈 것인지가 아닐까 싶습니다. 좀 객관적으로 보실 때 그 생성형 AI의 전쟁에서 저희 한국 기업이 가지고 있는 경쟁력이 있다고 보시는지, 있다고 한다면 무엇이라고 생각하시는지도 궁금합니다.
I think probably because you have the chance to have a lot of different players on different segments of the value chain, the fact that you have people specializing in the design of chips that are really, because it's different kinds of chips from the, you know, the normal AI or, you know, the data centers, etc. So this is a very specific expertise. So having different actors positioned on the value chain, I think enables Korea to develop really a sort of offer in terms of AI, where you can develop large language model, but you can also develop applications for the corporates, because now everybody's focusing on training models and having the largest LLMs or the biggest LLM. But I think thinking about the future applications, we were mentioning HR earlier, but there's a lot of applications where having the right algorithm and the right use case for LLMs will be key to take positions, to acquire positions on these markets, which are huge. So I think in Korea, because you have the chance to already have people who work on the hardware and having never developing an LLM, I think it's a very good opportunity to start, developing an ecosystem of other players, and as I think is the case, who, start from the idea that, the LLMs will be, the inference models will be available, and then you can start developing use cases and then be ready when the massive adoption will come. And I think this is not, when you see the progress from the launch of ChatGPT until the fourth generation of ChatGPT, it's like 6 months. So the rhythm is so fast. So you need to be ready in real time to capture the opportunities. And I think really in Korea, because you have a company like Naver, and because you have also a very good value chain in the semiconductor industry, this positions Korea, I think, in a very good way.
아무래도 한국이 작지만 정말 AI와 관련된 다양한 밸류체인과 그것에 관련된 또 기술 요소들, 그리고 좋은 인재들을 가지고 있기 때문에 이것들을 좀 잘 활용하면, 그래서 결국에는 좀 가치 있는 좋은 서비스들을 만들어내면 경쟁력이 있을 수 있다는 생각이 말씀을 좀 들으면서 들었는데요. 또 한 가지는 앞서 말씀 주셨던 어떤 유럽이라든지 영어를 쓰지 않는 다른 국가와의 연합이라든지, 예를 들면 저희가 얼마 전에 이제 사우디와 같은 비영어권 국가에 저희의 기술을 수출하면서 좀 느꼈던 점은, 아무래도 좀 제3국에 대한 미국과 중국이 주도하고 있는 이런 기술 패권 경쟁에서 좀 제3국에 대한 갈망이 다른 국가에도 있지 않나라는 생각이 들었던 것 같습니다. 그러면서 지금은 저희가 이제 한국어에서 가장 강한 AI 모델을 위해서 노력을 하고 있지만, 유럽이 원하거나 일본이 원하거나 사우디아라비아가 원하거나 그런 연합을 구축하는 것도 좋은 아이디어가 될 수 있을까요?
Yeah, I think so. So I hope that, sometimes countries are a bit selfish and they really think that they can do everything on a standalone basis. But I think really on this market, it's going to be, the race is going to be so fast, and there's going to be so much money put in this competition that definitely alliances will be really strategic. So I hope we can create them. And you cited a number of countries, but I think when you look at India, for example, or Latin America, these are countries that have different approaches, or approaches that are quite different and quite independent from the leading big techs that are American or Chinese. So these are countries that could be willing to adopt a third way, or to envision sovereignty as something very critical, and then try to find alternatives, so that not only one or two countries set the standards and also take all the value chain, as was the case in the past. So I really think that it's probably a responsibility that is both public and private, because the government should really encourage the private sectors to look for these opportunities and try to encourage the alliances between private actors in these countries that could be good partners in this competition for the supremacy in AI.
모델에 대해서도 저희가 조금 이야기를 나눴었는데, 생성형 AI가 아무래도 B2C 모델에서는 비용이 높고 적합한 이제 비즈니스 모델에 대한 고민이 있는 만큼, 지금 현재 많은 기업들이 앞다투어서 이제 경쟁을 하고 있고, 저희도 거기서 좀 잘해보고자 하는 영역이 아마 B2B 영역이 아닐까 생각하고 있습니다. 그 일부 한국 기업의 경우에는 저희가 이제 말씀을 많이 나누다 보면은, 직원들은 생산의 현장에서 LLM이라는 정말 획기적인 도구를 쓰고 싶어 하시지만, 기업들의 경우에는 그것들이 취급하는 정보들이 사실 기업의 소중한 자산이자 영업 비밀이기 때문에 이것들을 과연 퍼블릭 클라우드로 활용하는 그 LLM을 써야 할지 이런 의사결정을 하기 어려운 경우들이 많은데요. 이제 저희와 같은 경우에는 그럼에도 불구하고 이런 도구를 잘 사용하는 기업들이 결국 생산 현장에서 그 경쟁력을 가질 수밖에 없고 이것들이 또 앞으로 이 기업의 경쟁력을 좌우할 것이기 때문에 경영자들이 이것들을 어떻게 잘 도입할 수 있는 판단을 할 수 있을지가 좀 고민인 것 같습니다. 즉, 뭐 감정적인 반대, 기업들의 경우에는 직원들의 경우에는 이것들이 너무 좋지만 나를 좀 대체하지 않을까라는 두려움, 인원들이 감축되지 않을까 하는 두려움이라는 그런 감정적인 반대가 있을 수 있고 경영자의 입장에서는 우리 직원들은 이런 것들을 원함에도 불구하고 이런 기업의 소중한 정보나 데이터들이 좀 유출되지 않을까 이런 고민들을 할 수 있을 것 같은데요. 이런 것들에도 불구하고 생성형 AI가 기업의 현장에 도입되어야 하는 뭐 강점을 가지고 있다고 보시는지 그리고 만약에 그런 강점이 있다고 보신다면 어떤 강점들 때문에 기업들이 좀 이것들을 선제적으로 도입해야 한다고 보시는지 궁금합니다.
Well, I think that probably as a provider, so for example, if Naver is to have a sort of B2B solution to integrate LLMs in corporate businesses, then probably you have ways, I mean, I'm not a specialist at all, but you have probably ways to craft a corporate offer that will guarantee that the algorithms will be in-house or will not, send informations, will either anonymize or create some safeguards so that the data that belongs to a corporate will not be, treated or processed outside its own data centers, this kind of solution. So for people who have really a big IP issue or really trade secret issues, I'm sure there are some possibilities to guarantee them that the treatment and the processing of the data will be made in a way that will be consistent with their needs. So that's on one side. And then for the internal adoption of this LLM, so whenever I saw recently this case, so for the adoption, and I briefly discussed it in my speech, the adoption by team members of these LLMs. For example, I'm working with a big retail bank in France that has introduced LLMs to help the people to write their emails because they receive a lot of incoming emails from customers of the bank asking this or that. And actually, the ChatGPT or the LLM can generate sort of automatic responses by analyzing the content of an email and then suggesting some responses. So this is really something that helps them gain a lot of time, but at the same time they can ask themselves, okay, so what's my use if a robot can answer to my emails in my stead? So for this, actually the HR of this bank, they're very concerned that people feel very uneasy about their own job and then feel less committed and less involved, and that it will create productivity issues. So it's it's a revolution in the way we need to address this. So what they do now is they give, of course, optionality, and then you can rewrite your email, So there's a way to accompany and to introduce this kind of new tools and really train the people so that they understand that they can still supervise or they are free not to use it. So there are ways to deal with this transitional period, but it's a big deal. I think it's a big deal because it really changes the way you approach your independence or your autonomy at work, and I think psychologically it's something that you need to swallow and to digest. And so I think managers should really accompany this movement so that people can understand it's an opportunity to waste less time on low value-added tasks and maybe more time on things that require really a human interaction, like, for example, the contact with the customer, this kind of thing. So, so two different answers. One on the internal side is really, it will be super important to accompany by internal communication and training the adoption of these LLM tools inside the corporates. And also from B2B perspective, I think it will be very important also to educate the customers of who want to use LLM model to reassure them and to guarantee that they can safeguard the privacy of their data.
네, 감사합니다. 저희도 뭐 B2B 시장에서 사실 경쟁력을 갖추기 위해서는 정보의 보안이 가장 생명이라고 생각을 하고 있고, 이를 맞추기 위한 이제 다양한 상품들을 개발을 하고 있는데요. 그런 노력들을 더 기울여야겠다는 생각이 들었습니다. 이제 말씀 전반에 제가 뭐 산업이라든지 정책이라든지 그리고 채용 시장 여러 가지 전반에 대해서 물어볼 때마다 결국에는 AI가 가져오는 여러 그 윤리적인 이슈들이 필연적으로 계속해서 뒤따르는 것 같습니다. 개인정보, 뭐 프라이버시, 뭐 그리고 여기서 벌어지는 여러 가지 저작권이라든지 인간을 대체할 것이지라는 뭐 여러 가지 이런 그 소위 위협이라고도 표현할 수 있을 것 같은데요. 그에 대해서 이제 규제도 필요하다는 입장이 있고, 말씀 주신 대로 이러한 기술에 대한 통제권이 소수 국가에만 좀 집중되지 않도록 이런 그 유럽에서 말씀 주신 그런 규제라든지, 하지만 또 반대편으로서는 이러한 규제가 결국에는 스타트업이라든지 생태계 형성을 막는다, 혁신을 막는다라는 우려들도 있는 것 같습니다. 소위 저는 이런 거를 좀 딜레마라고도 표현할 수 있을 것 같은데, 정부와 기업이 어떤 식으로 이런 혁신과 규제의 사이에서 좀 균형을 잘 맞춰야 간다고 생각하시는지 궁금합니다.
Most difficult question, of course, because it's true that it creates a risk for countries who maybe have higher standards in terms of ethics. It was the case. Actually, it sort of reminds me of the case of the regulation for biotechnologies, or also experiences on stem cells, for example. So you could see that there were some different approaches, like in China or in European countries, for example, where manipulating DNA or manipulating stem cell is a big no-go in Europe. And it's probably is a bit more liberal approach in other countries. And this, even though in Europe there was no way we could authorize the cloning or these kind of things, you could consider that in a way forbidding these kind of experiences in Europe, and when it was allowed in other countries, could be a big handicap for biotechnology companies or big pharma companies. So being true to your principles and to your values, even at the cost of innovation or of competitive edge for your businesses, that is a very difficult question. And again, this will be exactly the same, because we are obviously at risk of, the fake news risk, when you see how fragile our democracies are nowadays, and how you can manipulate, and we saw it before Gen AI with the social networks, for example, how you can manipulate even, results of elections, of free elections in democratic countries. This is really super scary, because with Gen AI, you can, put in every leader's word, in every leader's mouth, things that he never said. It's very scary, even when you know that the first impression made of people is usually what they see on a screen, and even if they know later that it's not true, they still are influenced by the first impression that they got by seeing the fake news. So it is really scary, and you are understanding that I will not give you an answer as to how to find the right balance, but I think what is really very important in this moment where the governments will have to make choices is that they have a process allowing a lot of back and forth with the industry. So I think it's really important not to have a top-down approach. I think the best results are when you co-construct a regulation. So I think really the governments or the EU Commission should really have permanent discussions with the players, with the startups, not only with the big corporations, but also with the young startups who are very active in this Gen AI space, to understand, if they make this choice of regulation, what this will imply for their business, and what this will imply in terms of a competitive advantage or disadvantage. So I think this dialogue will be very important, so that we don't make any mistake that could cost us a lot and that we would regret in the future.
네, 현명하게 말씀 주셔서 감사드립니다. 네, 지금도 한국에서 비슷한 고민들이 굉장히 있고, 그렇기 때문에 정부나 그리고 AI 학습에 또 활용되는 여러 가지 또 단체들, 그리고 또 저희와 같은 테크 기업들, 그리고 스타트업들, 그리고 이용자들이 이런 윤리에 관한 문제들을 계속해서 이야기를 하고 있고 좀 현명한 방향으로 좀 문제들을 잘 정리되었으면 좋겠다. 그리고 저희가 또 그런 점에서 좀 책임감을 지고 앞장서야겠다는 생각이 들었습니다. 죄송하지만 제가 또 한 가지 더 어려운 질문을 시간이 좀 남았지만 이제 마지막 질문으로 드리고 싶은데요. 작년 이제 말에 챗GPT가 나온 이후로 올해는 생성형 AI의 그야말로 좀 한국식 표현으로는 춘추전국의 시대가 아니었나 싶습니다. 내년에 AI 시장은 어떻게 될 것이라고 전망하시는지 네, 마지막으로 드려보겠습니다.
Okay, I can't say anything because next year no one will remember my answers. I don't take a big risk. No, honestly, it's very difficult to predict because I was really super impressed by the difference of quality of the first generations and the fourth generation of ChatGPT. And it was, as I said before, only 6 months in the meantime. So it was actually, you know, I will tell you an anecdote. I run when the first ChatGPT came out in France, I put my name in chat. So tell me who is Fleur Pellerin. And then half of the answer was totally bullshit. It was something I could not even understand where it came from. Like I studied at MIT, I was working at Ernst & Young or something. So I was elected in a constituency. I mean, it was totally, half of it was wrong. And when I do it now, I mean, everything is accurate. So I think the progress, well, it's not that, you know, my specific case is so interesting, but the progress in terms of accuracy and also the progress in terms of when you prompt something, what you can obtain as a result is really fascinating. So knowing exactly what will happen, you know, from now in the next 12 months in terms of progress, it's super difficult. But I think what we will see is in terms of, for example, the images, or because we were talking of language and text, but when you see the creation of animated images, films, clips, you know, creative also, I don't know, creative campaigns, like for example, based on, you know, sort of artistic pictures, or it is really striking. So I think we'll see, you know, probably very impressive, you know, we were discussing earlier this creative, the danger for creative, for artists and creators. I think we'll see a big progress in this field. And I think we'll start to see some business models, probably more B2B, as you were saying earlier. So probably products that will be interesting for enterprises. But I'm sure that we will start to see business models and monetization. But yeah, it's interesting times, very interesting times, very critical.
제가 마지막 질문이라고 했는데 사실 정말 마지막 질문 하나 드리고 오늘 세션을 마칠까 합니다. 여기 아까 소개에서도 많은 분들 보셨을 수 있겠는데요. 사실 펠레리님은 굉장히 다양하고 어떻게 보면 모든 젊은이들이 꿈꿔보는 그런 그 경력들을 다 가지시고 계십니다. 그래서 프랑스에서 디지털 장관과 문화부 장관을 지내셨고, 그리고 프랑스에서 스타트업의 육성 정책인 라 프란치테크라는 그런 것들을 이끌기도 하셨고, 현재는 이제 코렐리아 캐피탈이라는 그 스타트업이나 벤처에 투자하는 기업들을 하면서 전 세계 여러 기업의 스타트업들의 대표들을 만나시면서 그들의 육성을 도와주시고 계시는데, 오늘 사실 제가 이 자리에 참석하면서 보니까 정말 많은 젊은이들이 여기 앉아 계시더라고요. 여기 계신 분들이 뭐 정책가가 되고 싶으신 분들도 있으시고, 뭐 기업에 들어가시고 기업에 들어간다거나 혹은 자기만의 스타트업을 좀 창업하고 싶다거나 이런 다양한 꿈을 가진 젊은이들이 있을 것 같은데요. 좀 선배로서 한국의 젊은이들에게 혹시 뭐 조언이라든지 하시고 싶으신 말씀 있으시면 해주시면 좋을 것 같습니다.
So I think I would, you know, so sorry for my messy answer. I studied business a long time ago, more than 20 years ago. And at the time, in my business school, no one really wanted to create its own business. You know, everybody wanted to work in an investment bank or to do some auditing, you know, with Arthur Andersen at the time. And now I see a lot of a young generation people who are ready to take some risk. And I think this is really something nice. Because it's not easy to be an entrepreneur. Sometimes you feel very lonely. Sometimes you have to deal with a lot of headaches, and it's difficult. So it's really taking some risk. But I think it's nice that this new generation, they feel like, okay, I want to be my my own employer, and I have this idea, I want to implement my idea, even if I risk to fail once. It's not that it's not bad to fail. I mean, you learn a lot more when you fail than if you succeed all the time. So I think I would encourage them to not be afraid by risk, not be afraid by failure. I mean, we are in societies, I'm sure Korea is a bit the same as in France. In France, we don't like too much and too obvious success, but we don't like failure either. So it's very difficult, the relationship to either, immense success or failure is a bit ambiguous. But so I would encourage people to really, take their chance and take the risk to start a business, but maybe look for advice. So when I started my business, for example, I wanted to pali. I was really in a hurry to do things, but maybe I did not take enough advice from peers or from people, external people who could have given me totally disinterested advice or guidance or mentorship. So I think it's very important, in order not to be too lonely, to have the right mentors and have people who can give advice, being totally not interested in your business, not investors, not business angels, etc., but people who can really give good advice. This is important, not to stay lonely when you create your business. That would be one advice.
자리에 오셔가지고 정말 다양한 영역에 대해서 제가 좀 어려운 질문들 많이 드렸는데요. 네, 그에 따른 그 식견 있는 말씀 감사했고, 오늘 이 자리에서 저희 대담을 들어주신 여러분들께도 감사드립니다. 네, 감사합니다. Thank you.
네, 고맙습니다. 수고해주신 두 분께도 감사 인사드립니다. 고맙습니다. 네, 정말 시간이 어떻게 흘렀나 싶을 정도로 많은 이야기를 들려주셨는데요. 답변 중에 말씀 주셨던 것처럼 당장 다음 해 AI와 함께할 미래를 예측하는 것도 참 쉽지 않은 일이죠. 그만큼 짧은 시간 안에 빠른 기술의 변화를 우리 모두 경험을 했는데요. 그렇지만 오늘같이 함께 또 미래를 차근차근 준비하고 또 전망하는 시간이 있어서 더 또 중요한 오늘의 포럼이지 않나 생각도 듭니다.